Welcome to this journey where we dialogue with thought and heart leaders to share their reflections on human condition and how to improve them.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello, Hannah. Good to see you.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Finally we connect.
Indeed.
Yeah. How's the weather out there in where you are?
Well, it's spring, and the leaves are just coming out. You've been to the UK, haven't you? Yeah. So
Yes.
the leaves are just coming out, and today is a sunny day. And you know, in spring it starts cold and then warms up. So there's condensation on the windows, but the bright sky, and just the leaves have just got that thin sheen of green over them as it goes. Very nice.
That's nice. That's nice.
Feeling of growth. How are things over there? Hot, I guess.
Yes, hot, humid in the afternoon and
Yeah.
getting colder in the evening.
Yeah.
I would like to initially begin, if you allow me, to understand how was Jeff as a child.
As a child. Confused. Yeah, confused. As a child, I was the third of four. But my parents had met during the Second World War, and my father left when I was 2 years old. So we were living with my grandparents in an industrial town in England, and there was not much space, and there was not much money. And I think my memory of childhood was basically one of confusion. And not knowing what was going on, and not really being able to relate to, particularly to men, not having a father figure. My grandfather was there, but he was quite distant at that time when I was young. He survived the First World War and the Second World War, so that was a big thing. And I think confused about gets it. Yeah. And of course, not having any money, my friends seemed to have more money than us and know what was going on. You know, they knew how to do things. They knew how to speak with people and stuff. Okay. And it was quite interesting.
Yeah. And how would you define your teenage years, your academics? What did you do in academics?
Okay. I got to a good school in the UK. We had a grammar school system then, so that was the saving of me, because that meant you were on the academic track and did very well, surprisingly well at school. Sort of created a persona at school of being captain of rugby and the lead in the school play, and one of the top academically as well. And then in the final year, I had quite a bad injury at rugby, so everything fell apart again, and I was in pain for a lot of physical pain for quite a long while, a number of years, and also through one of my, as far as I can remember back, it must have been very early adolescence, I was always interested, intrigued by what the point of this existence was. You know, I would walk out of my house and there would sometimes be a dead bird in the gutter, and it fascinated me. It looked the same as the one in the tree, so what was this thing that was different, this life thing? And so then, of course, one can't understand life without understanding death, I thought. So I went to work in a hospital between school and university, despite having had that, which was a very stupid thing to do, but I was a bit of a bullheaded young man. And I saw a lot of death, because you would take people in and out to various places, a lot of illness and dying. But of course, at the end of it, I didn't understand it anymore. I had a very lovely time. It was 1973.
Wow.
73-4, and Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon had just come out, and we just partied in the evenings. So it was a good year, but I didn't understand the quest anymore. And then that has been there have been two sort of driving factors there. After one was that, And that's taken me all over the place and worked in various traditions. And the other was family, because at university I met my wife. And the creative tension between the two has been one of the defining elements. And at university, I was very disappointed in university, because I had this thing that I would go to university and find a teacher, someone who knew what it was all about. And I found, lecturers, some academics and some not, and others that just, seemed to indulge themselves and screw their students and stuff like that. But I was very disappointed. The only thing that saved me there was meeting my now wife, and English and American literature, the transcendentalists and Shakespeare. These are the only things that seem to be talking to what was important to me. Yeah.
Quite.
The rest of it, I was still in a lot of pain, and so I self-medicated a lot. So I probably missed quite a bit of it.
quite journey. For someone who's just starting out, or for someone who's just wanting to understand the world, so we all know that we can't operate and function in the world without holding a worldview. You frame the world in a certain way. What would you? So, if somebody were to come to you and say, "Frame the world for me," in in a few sentences, how would you frame the world?
How do I frame the world to myself? Is that what you're asking?
To a youngster walking up to you and wanting to know, how do you frame the world, and yeah.
That's a big question. Well, of course, the main thing is to find out how they frame their world, because, as you pointed out, we all live in different worlds. We all create, well, most of us have our reality created for us. In my work now, one of the themes is increasing the ability for people to choose who they wish to be and how they wish to be. For many people, there is a point where they have to start, or they have the opportunity to begin choosing. That's sometimes just intrinsic, as it was for me. Who am I? What am I doing here? What's the purpose of this thing? For many people, it's a question that is delivered to them through the first death of a close person, a serious illness, a big change in life circumstances, the moment they understand that the world isn't all peace and love and light and that sort of thing. And it's a point of actually accepting that question, because the world, whatever that is, and the socio-economic system we live in, actually doesn't want us to answer that. It wants us to get on with working really hard, making lots of money and spending it to keep the socio-economic system going. I'm a great believer in that everybody can have their cake and eat it. So yes, you can work hard, make lots of money, have a really nice life, and do all the rest, searching for purpose and everything else at the beginning. As a number of principles I might offer as a basis for exploration would be to remind the person or people, as I do in my work, that breathing is a wholly positive phenomenon. There is nothing negative about breathing. Now, one day we won't be able to. Wouldn't it be awful at that point? Think, damn, I missed it. So, and however bad things may get, one can always take a breath. And the fact that we have such a short time in this most amazing place. I'm looking out of my window at the moment, and it is just beautiful. And this is England I'm talking about. It's rural England. We have such a short time is what we need to remember. People shy away, as you know, particularly in Europe and America and elsewhere, shy away from the fact of death in the last couple of generations. Whereas, for my parents, they'd lived with it through the wars, and you used to go and see your dead relatives. When my mother died, some of our friends said, "Oh, you're going to take the children to the funeral?" I mean, they were, 7 or 10, something like that. I said, well, of course. But there was this feeling that it might be difficult for them, So that's another layer of insulation we have from reality, or whatever the truth of our existence may be. the fundamental principle is that, you know, we're all unique human beings, unique manifestations of humanity, if you like, wherever we think humanity may come from, and that story we tell ourselves is not the most important thing. But we are unique. There is a purpose one can posit from that. The purpose of this unique manifestation is to realize, to make real that uniqueness, and to offer it to the greater whole for the greater good. And that leads to the fundamental issue that we have that blocks us, which is fear at various levels. And the other focus of my work at any level with any person is how do you release yourself from fear and allow yourself to explore who you may be.
Brilliant.
The rest is just stories. You know, who we think we don't. We have no idea who we are, really. We have no idea of our potential. We know physical potential, but as a totality, as a being, we have no idea. All the ancient traditions tell us that our potential, in reality, not in the external reality, but internal reality, is in fact limitless. We can, whichever ancient tradition you talk about, all of which have been updated in various ways, of course, but it's all been said before, is about accessing and unifying with the Absolute, which is infinite and beyond time. So, I don't know about that, but you know, several good people have said it, so I take it that it's true. And certainly, that vast potential we have, we limit ourselves by thinking we have to have a story to believe in. And for external purposes, we do. But once we begin to believe that story, we're telling ourselves about who we are, it immediately becomes a limitation. And it becomes a point of fear. Anyway, yeah. I could go on for a long time.
No, so this was, I think this was really heartfelt and a great thing. In fact, it could well qualify to be a commencement address to newly grads. For sure.
Yeah, one of those, yeah. I haven't got the right costume on for that.
Yeah. So, one quick question that is not part of this yet, but I just thought of it, is this thing of so if we were to believe that a lot of people have walked this planet before us, and you know, by different accounts they say it's about 30 billion people have walked this planet before us, and some among them really stopped, reflected, and shared their understanding, and then you had it appear in different forms, sometimes in forms of religion, sometimes in forms of poetry, literature, so on and so forth. And yet we come to become the society that we become now. How do we explain this?
I mean, there are many, as you mentioned, the poetry. So for some it is given to perceive and experience these things, and they let us know. For others it is not. And many metaphors, as you know, have been used through that. The metaphor of the body is always one that I find useful. You know, each cell has a different function. If your liver cell wants to migrate to the brain and start doing the brain's function, it causes damage. You know, if you find a liver cell in your brain, you've got cancer and you are dying. So this ability now. The problem, of course, is that we start telling ourselves a story which limits people. And you're in India, and the caste system was very much that rigid application of what is actually a vibrant and dynamic principle. And maybe for external needs and control and everything else, structures are needed. So there's constantly a difference between the external experience of humanity and the potential internal relationship with that, or what is happening. Because the experience of our physical senses is so strong, it swamps the inside.
Yeah.
And we are not taught in our educational systems, or have not been up until this point, about the value of the internal. Now, one of the great things that's happened when I came out of business and started coaching, if I'd gone into organizations and started talking about organizational consciousness and evolution, and individual conscious evolution and mindfulness and presencing, they'd have said, "What? Get out of here, you hippie! I don't want that. We want performance. We want productivity." So I use the language of sports psychology, which is about performance and winning.
Right.
Now, of course, in what is, in human terms, an incredibly short time, everybody knows about mindfulness, social evolution, conscious evolution, the popular psychology that's come in, that began in the 60s and 70s with transactional analysis and all that, that is now working its way very positively into common understanding, parlance. So the nature of humanity, it's the story it's telling itself is changing. There's a new narrative arising. Some people see that as conflict, causing conflict on the external world, and of course it does. We'll come on to ego and fear later, I hope, because that's just manifesting itself, what's manifesting itself at different levels. But this evolution is speeding up. Now, I'm sure your other interviewees have talked about this, that we are in a phase of incredibly accelerated evolution. It is like everything is quantum, so it's not a linear line.
Yeah.
There are evolutionary leaps.
Exponential.
Yes.
Non-linear.
And that's what's happening at the moment. So now, of course, we can talk about the inner world, and in the UK, they're beginning to teach mindfulness and meditation to young children. This is massive.
Yeah.
I mean, this is changing people.
Absolutely.
And allowing them to connect with an inner reality at that young age, which of course will determine the growth. What you put in determines the growth future. So who knows how and that's happening at the same time as communication and everything is happening, which again is something we get onto. So this growth of an understanding of the inner world is becoming more and more available. Those that can will take it up, those that can't won't, but there will be more. And there are many, many other indicators, if you look for them, of this massive change in social evolution. One of the greatest of these that I perceived recently is the film Frozen. You know the Disney film Frozen?
No.
Okay. Well, anybody with kids or grandkids around between the ages of 3 and 8 will know that film.
Okay.
And that's a massive indicator that how in popular culture a totally different message is being given to young women, particularly a wholly liberating and self-realizing message is being given to young children. In my generation, the Disney princess was wandering around the house singing "Someday my prince will come" as she was doing the house cleaning for 7 Dwarfs. Now, I saw my 2.5-year-old granddaughter singing along to the famous Frozen song, "Here I stand and here I stay, and I am one with the wind and the sky." Totally different message that the whole generation of young girls throughout the world are picking up.
Absolutely.
And that touches on another one of the, if you like, the tragedies or the difficulties of being a human being, is that our lives are so short. We have this ability to perceive what is happening and perceive an ideal. But because, to use that organic metaphor, because we are just a cell in a body, we can get a sense of how that body is evolving. But of course, we won't be there to see it. And the ego part of it is the selfish. I want it now. I want to see it.
Yeah.
But this is 3 generations away. Humanity is. If you think of humanity as an organism, of course it evolves at its own pace, and there's no way I can see these things.
Yeah.
But the indicators are there to be perceived.
Yeah. That's quite fascinating. Framing humanity as a self-organizing, self-evolved, sort of autopoiesis in systemic thinking. Yeah.
Well, this is part of what, I mean, you mentioned the poets and the seers and the prophets through the ages. That is what they talk about, you know.
Yeah.
16th century English poet, man is not an island alone unto himself. The whole thing that if you hurt one of us, you know, in all of the religions, that concept of the unity of human beings within the unity of the absolute, you know, all creation is one. And that's even backed up now. If you think of the scientific story of reality, which seemed to be opposing all of those traditional ones for so many decades, of course now they talk about the Big Bang. Well, in the Muslim tradition, you know, the creation story is God said, "Kun be," and it was.
Yeah.
So if that's not the Big Bang in different language, I don't know what it is. The Big Bang is just bang, there it was. It's been growing ever since.
Yeah.
So the same story. And the whole thing about it's all just energy. You know, everything comes down to it's not really there. You know, it depends how you look at it, whether it's a wave or a point.
Yeah.
It's not really there. And that's what all the traditions have been saying. You know, when it comes down to it, there is only one reality, the absolute, or what people call God. And we're all just manifestations of that in various ways.
Yeah.
All the stories are coalescing and coming together. I don't know if that's ever happened before, but there it is. It used to be fascinating that, you know, I was very aware when I was growing up that I could walk into a bookshop and buy, you know, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, Das Kapital, Mein Kampf, you know, any book. And that was probably the first time in history, human history, that the totality of information was available. Now, you do it on your tablet or your iPhone.
Yeah, on the move. Yeah.
The whole of human knowledge is there. And of course that causes problems because it breaks everything down. This is part of the evolution story that I'm sure we're going to come on to.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's fascinating. I hear you mention a couple of words, three words I hear you come back again and again: death, narrative, and choice. Let's get to choice.
Okay.
And you just mentioned about the paradox of choice, you know, having too much of information and having it absolutely anytime, you know, anybody's accessible anytime is also problematic many times. When we look at the word choice, we come at the crossroad of this thing called will versus determinism, and and the great debate that has been endless. There have been different answers, and I'm sure the jury is still out. How do you look at in your own personal experience, and when you express it and invoke this in people, how do you explain choice to them?
I explain choice. Most people know what they want, and then they pretend they don't, because it doesn't seem to be the same as what everybody else wants, or it goes against the conditioning that we've had. And most of the time we are externally driven. You know this. You know, it's like we grow up and they take away, if you know, assuming we were puppets, which is where the determinism comes from. We're so used to other people pulling our strings. Sit down, shut up, be a good boy, be a good girl, do what you're told, and all the rest of it. So the social conditioning is absolutely necessary for us to be a functioning, positive contributor to our social environment. Fine. But nobody ever tells us there is another way of being. You know, some of us find that out. And it's that choice we talked about at the beginning. Do I wish to explore that? Some people don't. Some people are not offered or have the capability. I have no idea why. You know? And, you know, you can waste endless time, as I had done as a young man, arguing with people about the whole thing. It doesn't get anywhere, of course. Because there's a different way of knowing. And that starts with presence. So this brings us on to the key element. You know, I work in leadership development primarily. And we say that the whole beginning is the whole core of leadership, and it all starts with leadership itself, is encapsulated by Rudyard Kipling, a poet that I think is being rehabilitated not as the apologist for imperialism, but often the voice of the common man. And in his most famous poem, it's called If. You probably know it. Most kids get it thrown at them.
But I think if you can share a few of those lines, that would be great.
Well, it begins, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. Because, of course, in leadership terms, you're a leader, you've got us into this mess, you've got to get us out. Well, if you stop going, I don't know what's going on, and start panicking, everything is lost.
Yeah.
So how do you, quote, keep your head when everybody else around is losing theirs? The only way you can do that is through presence. That's it. And the use of all the techniques that we have to manage the neurophysiology that we have. So that's the basis of everything. Because if I'm present, I have a totally different relationship to not only my being, but everything that is happening outside of that. If I'm not present, I have no choice, because if I'm not here, if I am not totally here now, where am I? There's a question. Where are you when you are not in this present moment?
That's, yeah.
You're often a fantasy.
Imagination, fantasy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or, if that little inner voice that's going on, if you think about what you think about, you're usually telling yourself a story about what's happened in the past, usually to try and enable ourselves to feel a bit better about our role in it, Well, it wasn't that bad, really, and or wow, that was really good, and how wonderful, and how good. So we can choose that story, And there's, most positive thinking, and a lot of it is about, all the cognitive storytelling and cognitive behavioral theories about really choosing the story we're telling ourselves about the past, or we're planning what's going on in the future. If you're actually in the moment, there's nothing to say. It just is. So this is a state of flow, or in sporting terms, being in the zone, where you're just totally present and connected and responding, not reacting, but able to respond with presence and with intention to whatever's going on around you, externally or internally. So then we come on to what takes us away, and that's the most powerful four-letter word in the English language, beginning with F, and it's called fear. So how do we manage fear? Fear is a physiological response. It's do you know the triune model of the brain? The very simple model. Hindbrain, midbrain, forebrain, reptilian brain, mammalian brain, human brain. Well, the amygdala, that little scanner, the alarm button, lies, right down at the back, just crossing the border between the hindbrain, the reptilian brain, and the mammalian brain. And as soon as that picks up something, its job is physical survival. So as soon as it picks up a danger, it hijacks. You've heard about the amygdala hijacks the whole the rest of the being about, right, we've got to survive. So when we're reacting from that, in a metaphorical way, we've become reptiles, reptilian. We're acting from our reptilian selves. The human bit is wiped out. Even the mammalian bit, the empathy, the caring, all of that is completely negated. And all we've got is the emotion of fear and aggression. Well, any decision made from that is clearly the wrong decision. Any choice made from that is clearly the wrong choice, because we're not using the whole of our capacity. And yet we live in this state of subacute fear, subacute sympathetic drive, because that hindbrain bit hasn't caught up with the fact that we're constantly experiencing stuff we don't know about, meeting people we don't know, and all of these might be a threat. So everything has to begin with the ability to put that aside And that's where mindfulness is part of it. But how do you use active presence? Constantly active, as you would be as a high-performing sports person. You know, you can't imagine Roger Federer going on to centre court at the Wimbledon final. Come on then, hit the ball at me. Of course, it would be disaster. They spend a lot of time being present because they know not only is that the best place, it's the only way they can respond wholly and positively to what's going on around them. So that's where it all begins, managing fear. The only way you can do that is through presence. Because as soon as that hits, we are taken out and we are acting under the catastrophizing story we're telling ourselves about what might happen.
Interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Fear is not human. Fear is reptilian, if you want to take that metaphor forward. And so if we want to be human, we have to be able to manage our fear. And you can't manage your fear from the thinking mind. We've all been in this where we've got an interview or we're in a discussion or we're going to meet someone, we find ourselves getting tense and nervous.
Yes.
And we say, oh, this is bad, I should relax. And you try and tell yourself to relax, it just makes it worse. Because of course it doesn't work. To manage that neurophysiological response, you have to use your neurophysiology. To manage the body, you have to use the body. And that will then release the potential of the higher aspects of the brain that are then able to access those other inner dimensions that we've touched upon. It all begins there. And the story people speak, of course, yeah, okay, that then gets on to ego and the relationship of ego to fear and how that enables us to live in a false reality. There we are. I don't know whether you want to go down the business coaching route or the human philosophy route.
We'll see what we can cover.
They're both combined, of course.
Yeah, we'll see what we will be able to cover in the next 25 minutes and then maybe follow it up with another call after some time. You worked. Can you help us on your journey of your corporate experience working as a professional and then turning into an entrepreneur, and what you're working on currently?
Okay. So I did English and American literature at university. And when I left university, of course, getting a job was not a problem, and I was going to be a writer and all of this stuff. And then we found ourselves having our first child, and I totally panicked. I thought, I've got to get a proper job. I've got to get all these things for the kids, for the family. So there was a big company I finally managed to get a job in their internal advertising thing, and this was a pharmaceutical company. And it was a boring job, but for the family, it's okay. Good salary. Security is what I was after. And I learned very much about organisational security because after 18 months, just after our child had been born, they closed down their internal agency and outsourced it. So that then started me on a journey within that business. The business world, a world that I'd never dreamt I would be a part of. And at the beginning, people used to say, "What are you doing here?" What are you doing? I'm paying my mortgage. Anyway, that went very well, and I had a very nice career in that for 25 years. And went up through national, international management, and they paid for me to fly around the world very nicely, talk with fantastic professors and senior people and see great places and stuff, and they also enabled me to support my family very, very well, so it was wonderful. But as the years went on, it became more and more difficult for me to go to work because it was less and less in harmony with who I really was. And then when the kids were at a certain age, I just couldn't do it anymore. I could not literally survive in that environment. And I was supposed to leave with a nice wad of share option money, but the company collapsed just before I could. So life has a way of making you make these decisions properly. So we had a family conference, and we told the children at that point, because they were growing up, the pressure to stay there and do it. We had enough money for them, for their education and stuff, and it was fine. So I took a leap. And it's been wonderful, of course. It's been wonderful. And every now and then you think, God, I wish I'd started sooner. But of course one couldn't.
Yeah.
The imperatives that were driving one meant that it was not possible to do that. And that's another part of the story. You go into this fantasy, wow, what would have happened if I'd... Irrelevant. No. Here, now, is the only thing that exists. The movement, the steps, the thoughts, the stories, the relationships of this moment will determine what happens next. We'll know this, but we go on as if it's not really real, because we get distracted from what we know to be true.
Yeah.
And that's another of the principles that we have. So the choice that we work to is to enable people to live what they know to be true, without fear, and with the knowledge that as they live that truth, what they know to be true will change and evolve. Now that brings us back on to the ego bit, because if you think of the ego simply as the social construct of ourselves, we need this to interact with the outside world, but the mask takes over. That's another common metaphor. The mask takes over. It is full of fear because ontologically, in reality, it knows it doesn't really exist. It's a false construct. So it's constantly trying to reinforce its validity. It's looking for things to be true. It needs a permanent truth. Now this leads, we see that all over the place. We see it in fanaticism. We see it in, this is true and that's not true. And as soon as you get to that point, then you get the bloodshed and the fighting and the conflict, because it desperately needs something to be true so it can hang an identity onto that. And this has been true all the way through. Now, part of the evolution that's happening is that is not really possible anymore. No? It's not that there are not truths, but they are not the truth. And this is where people get confused. I want my truth to be the truth. Well, it's true for me. Different things are true for you. Now, there's a chap called Richard Barrett. If you can get a conversation with him, it'd be really useful. You know his work. And one of his phrases, because he works very heavily with values, is values unite, but beliefs divide. I always use the example of the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity and Islam. If you read the Bible, the Quran and the Torah, core values are all the same. You know? Honour your Creator, be thankful to have this short chance in this beautiful place, be a good person, look after your children, honour your parents, don't steal, don't kill, you know.
Right.
And the values that unite, but as soon as it comes to the belief level, which is driven by this ego, I want something by which to define myself, it suddenly becomes my God's better than your God. No, she isn't. Yes, he is. And bang, bang, we're dead. And there it is. Every perspective is true, but for the truth, it's all the perspectives. Now, if you take that up for the whole of humanity, you can see where the conflict comes from. So, knowing that the ego doesn't really exist, who I think I am doesn't really exist. Again, this is getting onto the philosophical basis. This is where the choice comes in. And this is why it's so important for presence. Because then you can explore that other aspect of reality and what there is beyond the story. What is there when the story stops? What is there? For many people that's frightening, of course, because we're told that the ego self is the only reality there is. If you look in the events in the world that Brexit is very important over here. There was massive hysteria on social media when that went through. If you look at the election of Trump, I mean, an amazing phenomenon in human history.
Global event.
For what?
It is a global event.
Yeah. You know, well, however it happened, you look at the hysteria that is still going on.
Yeah.
And it's like, this cannot be true. One social media points up, democracy isn't working. It's like saying, yes it is.
That's what got him elected.
But also, it's a late stage democracy. Socrates even talked about this in the Republic.
Okay.
He actually defined and discussed how the problem with democracy is that it's the only political system that would end up supporting the creation of a demagogue, of a dictator.
So it would lead up to a dictatorship, is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. And we could see that the potential of that. Take Berlusconi in Italy. I mean, to the rest of the world, he was a bit of a joke, just like Trump is at the moment. How did they get there? Because of the control of the media. And by controlling the media, they control the story.
It's interesting. It's very interesting. There's a thinker in University of Berkeley, Dacker Keltner. He's the founder of Greater Good Science Center there, and he's written a book called The Power Paradox. Where he's actually at the nuance of what exactly you're describing, in the sense, what gets you there, you shed away, and there is something else at play, and it just completely, there is sort of an entropy, or things just fall off. And what you're referring to is, democracy getting us to a certain place, but then people in the power, in the helm, maybe mislead themselves and the others. Yeah.
Well, I don't know whether they mislead themselves. I probably believe in their delusions, but I believe in my delusions as you believe in yours. It's just that we don't want to force everybody else into them. Well, not often. You touch on something very important there. A number of things. First of all, none of this is new. Socrates was writing about this way back. We talk about NLP in your linguistic program. The best definition of that I've ever come across is the first verse of the Dhammapada, the sayings of the Buddha. My life of today was determined by my thoughts of yesterday. My thoughts of today determine my life of tomorrow.
Right.
My life is a function of my thought. I mean, this was written thousands of years ago. It's all there, but we forget and have to recreate. Now, when you look at what's actually happening, there's a chap called Buckminster Fuller, and I use his quote: "To change reality, you don't fight what exists, because we know that what you resist persists. You give it energy. Okay. To change reality, you have to create a new model that makes the old model obsolete." Yeah. And to an extent, at the human level, this is what I perceive. This is what is happening. There is a new model growing up. I touched on it with my grandchildren, that whole generation having a whole different message given to them about women, about the power of women, about how they relate to themselves and the world through really popular media. You've got the internet, you've got all the stuff that we know is happening. All we can see is the breakdown of the old model. We see it breaking down. All the institutions that just a generation ago were all revered and never questioned, they're all being undermined. The concept of the presidency of the United States is completely turned on its head at the moment. All the events are breaking down. Nobody can hide anything anymore. However strong China's war is, the internet will still get through it because of people. So it's this complete liberation of the individual. All of the old social control structures are breaking down, and with that, the social structure breakdown was. So this breakdown is what we see. What we don't see, because we can only see what we know, And if you think that at general social level we only see what the media tells, they can only see the old world.
Right.
They don't look for the shoots, the germinating aspects of the new world coming along. Now you and I intentionally look for that. You mentioned the centre in Berkeley, you know, the work of Otto Scharmer, all of the stuff on new organisational structure and organisational consciousness, and all of that, it's there. This is growing up whether we like it or not. So the new model is being created. The trouble is it hasn't become the common narrative yet. You know, everybody uses that word narrative, but people are still telling themselves the old story. Like, oh no, it's all falling to bits. Yes, have a look over here and you can see what's growing up. But it's terribly frightening because my ego self is predicated on the old world. In organisational work, of course everybody wants thoroughly engaged and thoroughly empowered workforce. But when you say, yeah, but you're going to have to give up your subconscious sense of importance, status and power to enable that to happen. Can't do that. I want it, but I don't, you know, it's like, I want the new, but I can't let go of the old.
That's,
you know, the old change problem.
That's the stuff maybe they're comfortable talking to their friends or the psychologist, not to somebody who's come and changing the organization design perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it depends. I took a decision a few years ago that I would work not with major organisations unless there was a real intent to change.
Yeah.
So I tend to work with small and medium enterprises and startups because then you can get human reality, not socioeconomic reality, but human reality.
Amazing.
Driven by engagement and the release of fear. We call it the fearless culture. You can get that into the DNA right at the beginning. That creates a whole energy, gravitation pull about the organisation that attracts people that are not scared by it.
I love the way you framed this, the human reality versus the socio-economic reality. I think it's a brilliant framing. Brilliant framing. So Jeff, you mentioned about so there's this thing where as humans, each of us look for a lot of, we have this dichotomy, we nurse and nurture belongingness and autonomy.
Yeah.
In your journey, how have you sensed it and how are you helping people understand that both of them are required and that there is no, I don't want to preempt the answer, but that there is this sense of autonomy and this sense of belongingness, and we sort of struggle to keep a balance of the same. How's your framing of this?
Several ways. Yes, tough. Part of human reality is that we live on the paradox. We are constantly balancing these paradoxes. At the social level, everybody wants a strong leader, to be elected. We want a strong leader, and then everybody complains about them being too strong and telling everybody what to do and not listening. We know this. You can see it in every all over the place. So we constantly provide this. That paradox between wanting my autonomy but also wanting to belong is the one we balance all the time. And it's a whole number. There's a lovely psychology, a group psychology of the paradox, a whole long list of the paradoxes I could send you that we operate under as soon as we enter a group, all subconsciously, of course. Now, and it's at that level. Now, the the triad of thesis, antithesis, synthesis. You know that one?
If you can explain a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
The dialectic, some people call it the Hegelian dialectic. So, if I say day, what's the first word that comes to mind?
If you say day,
yeah,
I would say today.
Day.
Today.
Or day. Okay, today. Okay. If I say black, first word that comes to mind?
Hair.
Fair enough. Then you've got the different associations. Okay. Often when I do that, I say day, people go night. Black, white.
Okay.
So this sort of opposite thinking.
Okay.
And that's because we can only define something by its opposite.
Okay.
I only know it's daytime, what we call daytime, because it's going to be night. If it was always light, it would just be as it is. Yeah,
Right.
it would just be as it is. So every time somebody says this is, it immediately brings into being what it is not. So you've been in meetings and it's got to arise, right, so this is what we're doing. And that's when he goes, yes, but. So
Yes.
they just, by defining this, everybody can see that.
Yes, yes.
So in the dialectical terms, this is called thesis, this is, brings in its
Antithesis.
this is,
Yeah.
antithesis, yeah?
Yeah.
Thesis, antithesis. And these two lock in because they're on the same level. Opposites. Yeah. In order to do that, there's one thing that needs to be connected with, to put it that way. So you've been in meetings and you're just about to come to a conclusion, then two people start locking in, arguing, locking horns. Everybody else in the meeting goes, oh God, they're at it again, and starts fiddling on their phone. And they go, until somebody comes along, maybe they say, look, what are we talking about here? What are we trying to do? And they'll go, yeah, okay. And so what that does, they're talking about purpose. They're talking about the common purpose. What are we trying to do here? That then destabilizes this locking.
Yes.
By referring to purpose. And instead of looking at these 2 points, this is true and this is true, they look at what unifies those two different aspects. So my grandmother used to say when I was fighting with my brother, oh, you two, you're always fighting about two ends of the same stick. And that's all we ever fight about.
Yeah.
It is never this or that. It is always this and that. Yeah?
Yeah.
You think about the last time you had an argument with your dearly beloved,
Yeah.
It was absurd.
I had it last evening.
Both points were true. But I wanted mine to win.
Yeah.
But there we go. So, in order to resolve these paradoxes, we need to know our purpose.
Yes. Yes.
The purpose is like the keel of a boat. Not only does the keel of a boat keep the boat upright in the storm, it also turns lateral force into forward movement. Or it's like that old experiment we used to do with iron filings at school. Do you remember that? Iron filings and a magnet?
Yes. Yes.
And you bring the magnet up and it creates a shape of the magnetic field, and then when you bring it right up, it goes to both poles. Well, your purpose is like you're in a magnet. However confused and randomly it's done, when you touch with your purpose, it brings a pattern. You can see what's useful, what's not useful, where you're going, what needs to be done. It's the ability to keep your head. Even though everybody out there is losing theirs, what is my purpose here? Suddenly I become internally directed instead of distracted by the outside. And you're accessing that whole different dimension through that deep, well, the more deeply and the more firmly we can connect with our purpose, whatever it may be at any particular time, and it changes through our evolution and growth, then that helps us become internally directed and not distracted. Helps us see what the reality for us is, but it also enables us to see others' reality and to be able to connect with that, which is what leadership is all about.
I really like the magnet example that you gave. Really, really good. Would this Jeff in your idea also so we moved away as a species. I think we've moved away from doing a lot of motor functions, and started doing a lot of functions here, and here, and I believe that we've started dealing in a lot of things which are abstract, because these are not tangible. These are conceptual understandings that we're trading all the time. And as you rightly pointed out, when we come together and we discuss for something, invariably, our biases, our one-upmanships, our own way of framing the world gets in the way. Do you think that presencing and being actively present in the now and the practices that you've been helping people with, do they help in overcoming them in themselves? And in what way do they help in these conversations that they strike with the others?
Okay. Judith Glazer's work at the moment is very good. She's doing a lot of work on conversational intelligence, and she has 3 levels. Level 1 is basically, I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to do it. Level 2 is, we're going to have a really good discussion,
Right.
but I'm going to win. We tell ourselves we're having a discussion, but I'm actually advocating what I'm doing. I ask you questions, but the only reason I'm listening to you is because I can get more information to come back to you and tell you. And then level 3 is real partnership. It's co-creation.
Yeah.
So part of if you look at what's happening at the meta level, as we talked about for humanity, the individual correlation, if you like, aspect of that is the increasing unification of the different aspects of us. Now, right brain, left brain harmonization, mind, heart, body harmonization. And that's where purpose comes in. Because if my purpose is to win and prove how clever I am, to reinforce my ego self, then I will argue and I will fight and I will get terrified. All of this comes from fear of losing status or whatever.
Right.
If my purpose is to really understand, is to find the truth of the situation, then it's not so much what I know, it's what you know. I need to be comfortable in my ignorance. I mean, this is a paradox I give to my people about leadership. You know, the first thing you've got to be comfortable with as a leader is you don't know. But leaders are supposed to know. And we're into a whole conversation about the hero's journey and how that's been corrupted by media and everything else, but that's a different conversation. But on this one, if I'm really comfortable that I don't know, there is absolutely no way I can see what you see or know what you know. So if I want to find the truth of the situation, the first thing I have to do is ask you, what do you see? What do you know about this situation? Because my purpose is to act upon the truth, to find the best solution, whatever it may be. The trouble is, we get triggered. A little fear goes, oh no, that's not right. And we've all found ourselves starting out a conversation, very professionally, very adult-like. We've got to find the best solution for this.
Yeah.
And 5 or 10 minutes later, defending a position, really vociferously defending a position we didn't know we had 5 minutes before. What happens? Well, that ego gets triggered, that fear of losing status, of not winning, of looking stupid. And we've lost our original purpose. The purpose, instead of finding the truth and the best solution, has become me winning. So that we've gone from here, the higher level, a unified purpose, back to the reptile wanting to win.
Yeah.
Well, that's where choice comes in. And what's the frame of reference? You can only make a choice by having a frame of reference. Yeah? You choose by, oh, this is a good thing, this is a bad thing, through referring to an ethical or a values frame of reference. And the fundamental frame of reference is purpose. What is my purpose here? That is the reference point to which I go. And that, of course, then takes us right back to the beginning. Is what is my purpose of existing? The ontological.
Amazing.
So,
I'm
and that's the you're going to have to.
Yeah, I'm so happy that we covered so much. It's dense, and in fact, I'm sure it warrants another round of conversation sometime soon. But if we have another 5 minutes, I would like to capture a couple of more thoughts from you. Can we go for another 5 minutes?
Have to be, yeah, okay.
Okay. So, what's the book that you're reading, or what is the thing that you're reading right now?
I'm reading 2 books. One is Knowing How to Know,
Okay.
by Idris Shah. Very good book, recommend to everybody. And the other one is I'm rereading The Conversational Intelligence.
Wow.
By Judith Glaser.
Amazing, Jeff. Jeff, thank you so much for your time. and insights. I think you offered some very fresh perspective, and we look forward for having more interactions with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hemant, and good luck with the project.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you.